The morning sun cast long shadows across Fort Knox as the massive M1 Abrams tank sat motionless in the maintenance bay, its 70-ton frame looking more like a defeated giant than America's most feared war machine. For 3 weeks, the best mechanics in the Army had tried everything to bring the beast back to life, but the engine remained stubbornly silent. Staff Sergeant Marcus Johnson wiped the grease from his hands and stared at the diagnostic computer screen showing nothing but error codes. At 28, he was considered one of the finest tank mechanics in the service, but this particular Abrams had humbled him completely. The tank had been brought in from active duty with what seemed like a simple electrical malfunction, but every attempted fix had led to more problems. Before continuing, give this video a like and subscribe to hear more stories about the unsung heroes who serve in ways you never imagined. Still nothing, Sergeant? Colonel Patricia Williams approached, her boots echoing against the concrete floor of the maintenance facility. The morning briefing had been postponed twice because of this tank, and the pressure was mounting from higher command. "No, ma'am," Marcus replied, frustration evident in his voice. "We've replaced the entire electrical harness, checked every circuit board, even swapped out the main computer. It's like the tank is fighting us." The colonel studied the silent machine, its desert camouflage paint scarred from months of deployment in harsh conditions. This wasn't just any tank, it was Iron Wolf, a veteran of 3 deployments that had saved countless lives and earned its crew numerous commendations. The military couldn't afford to lose such a valuable asset, especially with training exercises scheduled for the following week. "What about Specialist Davis and his team?" Colonel Williams asked, referring to the other mechanics who had been working around the clock. "They're as stumped as I am, ma'am. Davis has 15 years of experience with these machines, and he's never seen anything like it. We've even had engineers from General Dynamics come out here twice." "Nothing." The maintenance bay buzzed with activity as other tanks received routine service, but Iron Wolf remained the center of attention. Younger soldiers would walk by and shake their heads, some joking that the tank was cursed. But Marcus didn't believe in curses. He believed in hard work and mechanical precision, yet neither seemed to be working here. Colonel Williams examined the maintenance logs, noting the progressive failures that had occurred despite each repair attempt. The tank would show signs of life, systems would come online briefly, and then everything would shut down again. It was as if the machine had lost its will to fight. "Sergeant, I want you to take a break," the colonel said finally. "You've been at this for 18 hours straight. Get some coffee, clear your head." "With respect, ma'am, I'd rather stay and—" "That wasn't a suggestion, Johnson." As Marcus reluctantly stepped away from Iron Wolf, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something fundamental. The tank service record was impeccable, its mechanical history well documented, but somewhere in those tons of steel and electronics lay a mystery that modern diagnostics couldn't solve. The afternoon shift arrived, bringing fresh eyes and renewed energy to the problem. But as the day wore on, Iron Wolf remained as silent as ever, its massive cannon pointed toward the bay doors like a sentinel waiting for a call to action that would never come. By evening, word had spread throughout the base about the unstoppable tank that couldn't be started. Some called it ironic, others saw it as a bad omen. But for Marcus Johnson, it represented the most challenging puzzle of his military career, and perhaps the most important one he'd ever need to solve. Colonel Williams sat in her office that evening, reviewing personnel files by the amber glow of her desk lamp. The base had grown quiet, except for the distant hum of generators and the occasional footsteps of night patrol. Iron Wolf still sat in the maintenance bay, and tomorrow would bring another day of failed attempts and mounting pressure from division command. She paused at an old file that had been misfiled among the active personnel records. The photograph showed a weathered face beneath an olive drab cap, with eyes that seemed to hold decades of mechanical wisdom. Master Sergeant William Bill Harper retired. His service record was impressive: 32 years maintaining and repairing military vehicles. with a specialty in tank engines that was legendary among the older NCOs. Harper had worked on everything from Vietnam-era M60 tanks to the first M1 Abrams that rolled off the production line. More importantly, according to the notes in his file, he had been the chief mechanic responsible for Iron Wolf during its initial deployment preparation 5 years ago. The colonel reached for her phone and dialed the number listed in Harper's file, wondering if it was still current. After 3 rings, a gravelly voice answered. "Harper. Master Sergeant Harper, this is Colonel Williams at Fort Knox. I apologize for calling so late, but I need to ask you about a tank you once worked on." There was a pause on the other end. "Well, haven't heard from the Army in 2 years. Which tank are we talking about, Colonel?" "Iron Wolf, the M1 Abrams with hull number 4-7-7-2-8 Alpha," Harper finished. "I remember her." "What's she doing to you folks?" Colonel Williams explained the situation, detailing the 3 weeks of failed repairs and the growing frustration among her mechanics. She could hear Harper chuckling softly on the other end. "Sounds like Wolf is being temperamental again. She always was a particular machine. Your boys try replacing the main electrical harness. First thing they did. Computer systems. Twice. And I'm betting they've run every diagnostic in the book. Multiple times." Harper was quiet for a long moment. "Colonel, with respect, your mechanics are good at fixing broken things. But Iron Wolf isn't broken, she's just forgotten how to trust." The statement caught Colonel Williams off guard. "I'm not sure I understand, Sergeant. That tank has been through hell and back. 3 deployments, countless combat situations, multiple crew changes. She's been poked and prodded by more mechanics than she can count. Sometimes these old girls just need someone who speaks their language." "Are you saying the tank has feelings?" Harper laughed, a sound that carried years of experience. "Not feelings, ma'am, personality. Every machine develops one after enough time in service. Iron Wolf was always particular about who worked on her. She trusted me because I took the time to understand her quirks." Colonel Williams found herself considering something she would have dismissed as nonsense just days earlier. "Master Sergeant, would you be willing to come out here and take a look? I can arrange for you to be brought on as a civilian contractor." "I'm 73 years old, Colonel. These old hands aren't as steady as they used to be." "But they remember Iron Wolf." Another pause. "I suppose they do. When do you need me? How soon can you get here?" The next morning, Marcus Johnson arrived at the maintenance bay to find Colonel Williams waiting beside Iron Wolf, with an elderly man in civilian clothes. The stranger wore a worn baseball cap and had grease stains on his fingers that looked permanent. "Sergeant Johnson, meet Master Sergeant Harper, retired. He's going to help us with our problem." Marcus looked skeptical as he shook Harper's weathered hand. "No offense, sir, but we've had multiple experts look at this tank. I'm not sure what else." "Son," Harper interrupted gently, approaching Iron Wolf with the slow reverence of someone greeting an old friend, "this tank doesn't need fixing. It needs understanding." Harper circled Iron Wolf slowly, his experienced eyes taking in details that others had overlooked. He didn't head straight for the engine compartment or reach for diagnostic equipment. Instead, he simply observed, occasionally running his weathered hands along the tank's armor plating as if reading Braille. "She's been worked on by too many hands," Harper said quietly, his voice carrying the authority of decades. "Look here," he pointed to scratches around several access panels. "Different tools, different techniques. Each mechanic left their mark, but none of them listened to what she was trying to tell them." Marcus watched with growing skepticism as the old man continued his inspection. Modern tank maintenance was about computers, diagnostic systems, and precise technical manuals. This almost mystical approach seemed outdated and inefficient. "Sergeant Harper," Marcus said carefully, "with all due respect, we've followed every technical bulletin and diagnostic procedure. The problem is clearly electrical, and we've replaced every component twice." Harper paused and looked at the young mechanic with patient eyes. "Tell me, Sergeant, what was the first thing that failed when Iron Wolf came in?" Marcus consulted his tablet. The main engine control unit showed fault codes indicating power supply irregularities. "And what did you do?" "We replaced the power supply unit. And then the backup systems started throwing error codes, so we replaced those too." Harper nodded slowly. "Like chasing ghosts, isn't it? Fix one thing and two more problems appear." Specialist Davis, who had been listening from across the bay, walked over. At 43, he was one of the most experienced mechanics on the base. "Look, I appreciate the old-school approach, but these new tanks are computer-controlled. You can't just feel your way through a repair." Harper smiled and patted Davis on the shoulder. "Young man, I was working on computer-controlled tanks before you knew what a wrench was. The M1 Abrams has had computerized systems since 1980, but underneath all that technology, it's still a machine built by human hands." He moved to the rear of the tank and knelt beside a small access panel that the other mechanics had barely noticed. "Iron Wolf has a particular quirk. During her initial setup, we had to run a secondary ground wire from the main electrical system to this panel because of a manufacturing variance. It's not in the technical manuals because it was a field modification." Marcus and Davis exchanged glances. Neither had seen any documentation about a secondary ground wire. "Over the years," Harper continued, "that wire gets corroded, especially in desert conditions, but it's hidden behind the main harness, so most mechanics never find it. When it fails, it creates feedback that makes the whole electrical system unstable." "Why didn't this show up in our diagnostics?" Davis asked. "Because modern diagnostics are designed to find standard problems. This is a custom solution to a specific issue that only Iron Wolf had." Harper stood and brushed dust from his knees. "I should have documented it better back then, but field modifications sometimes fall through the cracks." Colonel Williams, who had been observing quietly, stepped forward. "So you're saying this is a known issue?" "Known to me," Harper replied. "I should have checked that wire first thing, but I wanted to see what you boys had tried. Sometimes the direct approach isn't the right one." Marcus felt a mixture of frustration and admiration. "You're telling me we've spent 3 weeks replacing perfectly good parts because of one corroded wire?" Harper chuckled. "Not corroded yet, but I'm betting it's loose. The vibrations from combat operations probably worked it free. That would explain the intermittent nature of your failures." He opened his small toolbox, an ancient metal case that looked like it had survived multiple wars, and pulled out a worn multimeter. "Let's have a look." As Harper began to trace electrical connections with the practiced efficiency of decades, Marcus realized he was witnessing something rare: the intersection of old-school mechanical intuition and modern technology. The veteran wasn't ignoring the computers and diagnostics. He was using his experience to guide them more effectively. "Found it," Harper announced after 20 minutes of careful probing. Behind the main electrical harness, exactly where he had predicted, a thin green wire hung loose from its connection point. "She's been running on backup electrical pathways, which is why your diagnostics were so confused." The repair itself took less than 10 minutes. Harper carefully cleaned the connection points, secured the loose wire, and sealed the junction with military-grade electrical tape. The simplicity of the solution stood in stark contrast to the weeks of complex diagnostic work that had preceded it. "That's it?" Davis asked, staring at the small repair in disbelief. "Sometimes the biggest problems have the smallest solutions," Harper replied, closing his toolbox. "Sergeant Johnson, would you like to do the honors?" Marcus approached the tank's control panel with a mixture of hope and skepticism. He had attempted this startup sequence dozens of times over the past 3 weeks, each failure adding to his frustration. This time felt different, though he couldn't explain why. He pressed the ignition sequence, and Iron Wolf's massive engine turned over with a deep, throaty rumble that echoed through the maintenance bay. Every system came online smoothly, all error codes disappeared, and the diagnostic screen showed nothing but green status lights. "I'll be damned," Davis whispered. The sound attracted mechanics from other bays, and soon a small crowd had gathered around Iron Wolf. Some of the younger soldiers looked at Harper with newfound respect, while others seemed confused that such a simple fix had eluded their modern diagnostic equipment. "Master Sergeant," Colonel Williams said, "I owe you an apology for doubting that phone call was worth making." Harper waved off the comment. "No apology needed, ma'am. Your mechanics are good, they just needed to know where to look." This kind of institutional knowledge gets lost when old-timers retire without proper handover. Marcus stepped forward, his earlier skepticism replaced by genuine curiosity. "Sergeant Harper, how many other tanks have modifications like this that aren't documented?" "More than you'd think, son. Field modifications, temporary fixes that became permanent, workarounds for manufacturing issues. The official manuals can't capture everything that happens in the real world." Davis nodded thoughtfully. "We've been treating each tank like it's identical to every other one off the production line. That's the difference between maintenance and mechanical understanding," Harper explained. "Maintenance follows procedures. Understanding recognizes that every machine develops its own personality over time." Colonel Williams saw an opportunity. "Master Sergeant, would you consider staying on for a few weeks? I suspect Iron Wolf isn't the only tank on this base with undocumented quirks." Harper looked around the maintenance bay, taking in the modern equipment, the young faces eager to learn, and the sophisticated diagnostic systems. "I suppose I could stick around for a bit. Might be nice to pass along some of the old knowledge before it's completely forgotten." Over the following days, Harper worked alongside the base mechanics, sharing decades of accumulated wisdom. He showed them how to listen to engine sounds that diagnostics couldn't interpret, how to spot wear patterns that indicated developing problems, and most importantly, how to approach each tank as an individual machine with its own history and characteristics. Marcus found himself staying late each evening, absorbing lessons that weren't taught in any technical manual. He learned that Harper kept a personal notebook filled with modifications, quirks, and solutions that he had developed over 3 decades of service. "Why didn't you ever submit this information officially?" Marcus asked one evening as they worked on preventive maintenance for another tank. Harper paused in his work. "Politics, bureaucracy, and pride, mostly. Sometimes field mechanics and engineers don't communicate as well as they should. Plus, some of these solutions were born out of necessity in combat zones where official procedures weren't always practical. But this knowledge could help mechanics everywhere. That's why I'm sharing it with you now, son. Knowledge isn't worth much if it dies with the person who has it." 3 months later, Fort Knox's maintenance bay had transformed into something resembling a mechanical university. Harper had officially accepted a civilian consultant position, spending his days working alongside active-duty mechanics and sharing the institutional knowledge he had accumulated over his career. Marcus Johnson had become Harper's unofficial apprentice, documenting everything the veteran taught him in a comprehensive manual that would eventually be distributed to maintenance units across the Army. The manual included not just technical procedures, but the kind of mechanical intuition that could only come from decades of hands-on experience. "Sergeant Johnson," Colonel Williams announced one morning, "Division Command has approved your proposal for the Enhanced Maintenance Training Program. You'll be working with Master Sergeant Harper to develop a curriculum that combines traditional diagnostics with practical field experience." Marcus felt a surge of pride mixed with responsibility. "Thank you, ma'am. I think this could really make a difference." Iron Wolf had become more than just a repaired tank. It had become a symbol of the bridge between old knowledge and new technology. Harper had used it as a teaching tool, showing younger mechanics how to recognize the subtle signs that indicated potential problems before they showed up on diagnostic computers. Davis approached with a tablet showing maintenance schedules. We've identified 12 other tanks on the base with similar undocumented modifications. Most of them are running fine, but now we know what to watch for. That's the point, Harper said, looking up from where he was teaching a group of soldiers about hydraulic system troubleshooting. Prevention is always better than repair. These machines will tell you what they need if you know how to listen. The maintenance bay had taken on a different atmosphere over the past months. The younger mechanics no longer saw the older equipment as obsolete, and the veteran knowledge was being preserved and passed forward instead of being lost to retirement. Specialist Rodriguez, one of the newest mechanics on the base, raised her hand during an impromptu training session. Master Sergeant, what's the most important thing you've learned in 30 years of working on tanks? Harper considered the question carefully. Every machine is built by people, maintained by people, and operated by people. The technical manuals tell you how things should work, but experience teaches you how they actually work. Both are important, but neither is complete without the other. As the afternoon shift began, Marcus watched Harper patiently explaining a complex repair to a group of young soldiers. The old veteran had found new purpose in teaching, and his knowledge was being preserved and expanded upon by the next generation. Colonel Williams joined Marcus at the observation window overlooking the maintenance floor. It's remarkable how much has changed since that phone call 3 months ago. Yes, ma'am, it's like we discovered we were only using half our capabilities. What do you think will happen when Master Sergeant Harper eventually retires again? Marcus smiled, gesturing toward the group of mechanics clustered around Harper. I think the knowledge will keep moving forward. That's what he's taught us, that learning never really stops, and teaching is just another form of service. Iron Wolf sat nearby, fully operational and ready for whatever mission awaited. But more than that, it represented the successful marriage of traditional mechanical wisdom with modern technology, proving that sometimes the best solutions come from understanding the past while embracing the future. The old veteran had returned not just to fix a tank, but to ensure that the lessons learned over decades of service would continue to serve those who came after him. In the end, that was perhaps the most valuable repair of all.